Okay, here we are. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Behavioral Sciences board meeting. I am Max Disposti, the chair of the Board of Behavioral Sciences. My pronouns are him, as. Today's date is October 8th, and the time is 8:30 a.m. This meeting is occurring at various locations pursuant to Executive Order 2520, dated on March 12, 2020. Today's meeting will be conducted using the following guidelines. All participants will mute their microphone or phone during each petitioner's presentation. At the end of the petitioner presentation, the administrative law judge will ask each board member if they have any questions. Board members will unmute their microphone or phone to ask their question. Upon conclusion of your questions, please mute your microphone. At the conclusion of the board member questions, the ALG will allow the Deputy Attorney General and the petitioner to make closing remarks. Upon the conclusion of the closing remarks, the ALJ will conclude the matter. After each petitioner, the board will take a 10-minute break. An opportunity for public comments for items not on the agenda will be also provided. Please be advised that during this comment period, the board cannot engage in discussion or take any actions on any matter that is raised, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. We will now establish the quorum. So Christina, if you can please call the roll.
Morning. Max Disposti.
I'm here.
Christina Wong.
Here.
Crystal Anthony.
Here.
Deborah Brown.
Here.
Ross Ehrlich.
Here.
Susan Friedman.
Here.
Christopher Jones.
Here.
Jonathan Maddox.
Here.
Kelly Ranasinghe.
Here.
Wendy Strack.
Here.
And for the record, John Stovek is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Christina. Appreciate that. And so we're now moving on the public comments on the agenda items. If there are any comments, please come forward, raise your hands, and Steve will be able to see you. And you'll have 2 minutes. If there are any comments for each person, we'll have 2 minutes, not more, and we'll go from there. Steve, do you see anyone?
Yeah, I see Kimberly Miller.
Hey.
Kimberly Miller, can you?
Yes.
Okay, good. Please go ahead.
Hi, how are you? Thank you, board, for allowing us to do this. There's a couple of issues, and I know you can't answer the question, but it's just a lot of people are wondering if there's going to be future discussion about the comments that people have made since back to June and July about the issue with Pearson VUE and the testing issues and with the pandemic and everything, because a lot of people are getting increasingly nervous, and some people are now not even able to get a test date till February, and their licenses are going to expire even though, and I talked with my with Department of Health Services, whom I work for, because I'm on long-term disability right now, temporarily because of a back injury. And I was told that my job is secure and that I still need to renew my license, but they're very strict about it. And
That's the woman who's working with me on the Facebook group.
And I need
A lot.
I need to also address that a lot of people reacted very heavily about the fee increases for everybody. Everybody is like flipping out and saying that they want to leave the profession. I mean, it's like we're in a pandemic and they raised the fees, and a lot of interns and everybody are saying they can't even come up with $75 to do this. So this has raised a huge concern. So I'm kind of speaking out for a whole bunch of people, because I've been staying up with a lot of people on a group. I have a study group, and a whole bunch of people are like, is it even worth it for me to even continue in this profession? That just kind of went double, and nobody knows why, and everybody's making a lot of comments on it. I just wanted the board to be aware that we could chase away a lot of therapists and even wanting to continue the process. But I'm concerned about the online proctor testing and the fee increase.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and taking your time today. For some of these questions, on the website, we publish also questions and answers in relations to the fee increase. And hopefully that will address some of your concern, but thank you. Thank you so much for taking your time. Steve, is there anyone else?
I have a Kyle Jackson. Kyle, you can go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me? Well, I can turn on my camera too, I guess. Okay, hello. So look, the reason that I called in today, I'm not a counselor, I'm a member of the public, and I have been trying to file a complaint against a counselor, and I know that in the clear cases of unprofessionalism, racism, sexual harassment, things like that, there's a process to hold people accountable. But when it comes to the gray areas, I've been finding that it's a really uphill battle. There is a presumption that works in the counselor's favor. I understand that. This is a property right, a license. But I have found it really difficult to get clear information from even board behavioral science investigators about what's the specific criteria to prove a case. And when I've tried to ask for clarity, to be honest, I haven't gotten it. And I don't mean to be petty. I don't mean to be a problem, but I have not felt that I've been taken seriously. So I sent a letter yesterday, certified mail, to the Board of Behavioral Sciences headquarters in Sacramento. So someone will sign for it, and I know that the letter's been received. And this is not the time, I know, to talk about my specific grievance, but I really hope that someone will consider looking at the process for investigations and making it more consumer-centric, if there's any possible way to do that. And that's why I've called in today. And I can leave it at that. I know I only have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Your concerns are really valid. I just want you to know that I'm sure our staff is going to take your request in consideration. I see actually Ms. Madsen like to say something.
Yes, hi. Mr. Jackson, have you, what I would invite you to do at this point, if you can go on our web, just email me directly and we can, that'll give you a direct pipeline and we can look into your situation. And my email address is my name, kim.madsen, MADSEN, at dca.ca.gov. And then we can get into specifics.
Sure, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much again. Thanks. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Steve, anyone else?
I do not see any additional hands raised.
There's Sarah's phone, iPhone.
Sarah, or
Hi, I'm here because I just graduated in August with my master's in social work. So I've been going through the process of getting my registration number. And I just wanted to see if anything was being done to address the current backlog that we have for social workers, especially associates. I know that you can't talk about it today, but just in the future, if there's a plan, and if you could tell us the plan so that we could, I mean, we're trained to advocate, so we can write to our congresspeople if you need more positions, if you need more of a budget, just let us know what the plan is, and then maybe we could help support you to get what you need to address the backlog.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming forward today. We appreciate that. Anyone else?
let me make sure on the out there. I don't see anything in the board. Quick. And I don't see anybody else.
Okay.
Yep, that should be it.
So thank you everyone for our guest. You're more than welcome to stay. Thanks for joining us today. And we're moving now to our next agenda items that has to do with possible suggestions for future agenda items. This is for my colleagues and board members. Are there any suggestions for future agenda items? I don't see anyone. Am I right? Okay. Then we are moving forward to the petitioner.
You have Wendy, I think. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair Disposti, I
Yes.
just wanted to check in. I know we have Pearson View coming to a future board meeting to discuss the testing issue. Can you remind me of the date of that, or?
Thank you for asking. Actually, I know that it's on the November board meeting. Am I correct, Ken?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for asking that question, because I know there are some of our petitioners and people that came today also inquiring about that. And this is the petition part of our board. Usually we focus on those petitions because obviously take a lot of priorities. And in November, we'll address all the executive report, everything else that comes along with this. So, but thank you for asking that. I take that as there are no additional future agenda items. So at this point, I will turn the meeting under our AJ, our judge, Your Honor. The floor is yours.
Wait a minute, wait. We need to call the meeting to order and establish a quorum.
That would be really nice.
Minor technicality.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Okay. We're calling the meeting to order. I know Christina has to do a round call for our members.
Okay, Max Disposti,
Public member.
Christina Wong. Christina Wong.
Oh, sorry, turn off mine. Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Crystal Anthony.
Crystal Anthony, LCSW member.
Deborah Brown.
Deborah Brown, public member.
Ross Ehrlich.
Ross Ehrlich, public member.
Susan Friedman.
Public member.
Christopher Jones.
Chris Jones, LEP member.
Jonathan Maddox.
Jonathan Maddox, LMFT member.
Kelly Ranasinghe.
Kelly Runasinger, public member present.
Wendy Strack.
Wendy Strack, public member.
And those are all of our board members today.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina. So at this moment, we're moving the meeting to our petitioners, Your Honor. Thank
Max,
you.
can I really quick before we proceed, can we ask everyone who is not when we call the petitioners up, all petitioners, if you could have your video off, so it's just the board members, the judge and such. So you can turn your video off, and then when you get called up, please turn it on, and then we can talk.
Thank you, Steve. And for everyone, we only do this so to make clarity about the petitioners are being asked to come forward. So and also betters the connections for everyone, because sometimes can be a little bit too much with all the videos on. Thank you so much, Steve, for the reminder.
All right. This is Judge Van Rooyen. Can everyone hear me clearly? Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to move on to our first petition. Let me say, first of all, Mr. Sankit, if you're recording, we'll be starting right now to go on the record for this particular petition. We are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs for the state of California. We're here to review various petitions, and we will take them in the order that they appear on the agenda. The first one is the petition for early termination of probation by William Bumler. This is OAH case number 2020090419 and LMFT 53735 is the license agency number. My name is Wim Van Rooyen. I am an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings with the state of California, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter today. Today is October 8th, 2020, At 8:30 a.m., we are conducting this matter via Zoom due to the COVID-19 public health crisis and the governor's executive order N-2520. And that order was dated March 12th, 2020, and is still in effect. And I will also represent for the record that we had a roll call of the board members prior to the start of the petition portion of the hearing, and I do find that a quorum of the board members are present. May I please have an appearance by the Deputy Attorney General?
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, board members. Brent Jex, Office of the Attorney General for the public.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you, Mr. Jex. And then may I have Mr. Bumiller's appearance, please?
Yes. Can you see me?
I can see you and hear you clearly, sir. Thank you.
Okay, terrific, terrific. Thank you, Judge.
All right. And am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Please correct me if I'm not.
Yeah, I think you said Bumiller?
Yes.
William Bumiller? Yes, that's it.
Wonderful. And are you representing yourself today, or do you have an attorney to represent you?
No, I'm representing myself.
All right. And I just want to make sure you're aware that you do have the right to have an attorney represent you, but at your own expense. Unfortunately, unlike in criminal cases, there's no public defender in these civil proceedings, and it's still your desire to proceed representing yourself. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yes, it is, Judge.
Perfect. And then just in terms of the procedures for this hearing, first, the Deputy Attorney General will proceed and introduce your petition packet that's been submitted and provide me and the board members with an orientation in this matter. And then after that, you will have the right to make a presentation under oath to explain why you believe your petition should be granted. You have the right to obviously call other witnesses to testify in addition to yourself. And you yourself, as well as any witnesses you call, would be subject to questioning by the Deputy Attorney General as well as the board members today. And I would just emphasize that the board today is particularly concerned with your rehabilitative efforts and your activities since the previous discipline was imposed. The board members have had the benefit of reading your petition packet, so there's no need for you to necessarily repeat everything that's in the packet, but you can certainly highlight or emphasize any portions that you deem appropriate. And then the board members may have questions for you as well that follow from that. After the hearing is concluded today, in fact, after we finish all of the petition hearings today, the board will go into a closed session to deliberate on your petition as well as the other petitions. So you won't receive a decision today, unfortunately, but you will receive one in the mail sometime in the future. All right. Do you have any questions at this point in time that I can try and answer?
No, I don't, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
All right. Then at this point, then I'll turn it over to Mr. Jex to present the petition packet and to provide an orientation to the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I'm appearing on behalf of the Attorney General in accordance with Government Code Section 11522. My role is not adversarial, but is intended to protect the public interest. I'm here to assist in fact-finding and to help ensure the panel has sufficient information on which they can have a basis for their decision. Regarding the petitioner's packet, on July 17, 2013, Mr. Bumiller was issued licensed marriage and family therapist license number LMFT 53735. On August 16, 2016, Mr. Bumiller was convicted on his plea of no contest to one misdemeanor count of child endangerment and one misdemeanor count of driving under the influence. The underlying circumstances are that on February 10, 2016, Mr. Bumiller was pulled over after he was observed driving against oncoming traffic. During the stop, it was found that Mr. Bumiller's son was sitting in the back seat, and Mr. Bumiller admitted to consuming a pint of tequila. The board filed an accusation in February of 2017 and adopted a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order effective April 12, 2018. Petitioner's license was revoked, stayed pending probation for 5 years. This is Mr. Bumiller's first petition for early termination of probation. Petitioner's package contains the petition, which includes a personal statement, letters of support from Reverend Patricia Ferris and Professor David Daniel, a letter dated September 21, 2020 from Jenny DeForest, who is Mr. Buemiller's therapist, proof of attendance at AA meetings, a stipulation, modification of judgment, holiday schedule, and drug and alcohol monitoring, a misdemeanor sentencing memorandum from the Los Angeles Superior Court dated August 16, 2016, the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order effective April 12, 2018, notice of today's hearing, and a certification of Mr. Buemiller's licensure. As the burden is on Mr. Buemiller regarding the petition, I have no further statement at this time, but reserve the right to question him. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jex. All right, so Mr. Buemiller, now is your opportunity to testify. Is it your desire to testify before the board today?
Yes, if it's all right, I've prepared about an 8-minute statement that goes into depth, something I'd just like to offer to the board before they question.
That's absolutely. Let me just go ahead and swear you in first. If you could raise your right hand wherever you are, I'll do that. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much. And then if you could just state your full name and spell it for the record, please.
William Buemiller, spelled B as in boy, U, M as in Mary, I-L-L-E-R.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And then I'll just remind you, as I said earlier on, you're welcome to read your statement. You're welcome to provide any testimony you'd like. There's no need to repeat everything in the packet. The board members have carefully reviewed it, but feel free to highlight anything you feel is appropriate. All right, you may go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. And just for the board, I've timed it out. It's about 8 minutes, so bear with me. And I'm a little nervous, so.
Take a deep breath. We're all aware this is a big, it's nerve-wracking appearing in front of a judge and a board, and so take a deep breath, relax as much as you can, and take your time. All right.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. So when thinking about how I would describe to you how I was before and what led up to this particular incident, it occurred to me, what if I was my client and I came into my office and described to me what I'd just been through to orient me to the experience that had led me to seek help? That as a practitioner, I would have to hold the context for me, as one of having had an extreme and protracted experience of some of the most stressful events we experience as human beings. In the course of just a few years, I went through, to name the big ones, a foreclosure on my home, a protracted physical debilitation, a 9mm rupture in my L5, the death of my mother, a new relationship that turned intensely difficult relatively quickly, exacerbating an already tumultuous and acrimonious relationship with my son's mother, the concomitant struggles of being a single parent, the burdens and stress of a growing practice, and the inherent stress of spending 2 hours a day driving back and forth from Hollywood to Santa Monica. The most difficult aspect of all of that was that I lacked both an awareness of the stress that I was experiencing and its effect on me, as well as lacking the main support system that I'd had for years that had helped buffer that, and that was the relationship I had with my mother. She was a sounding board for me, a loving, wise, and supportive safe harbor in my life for all the doubts, worries, and concerns that I had for all of life's bumps and bruises. I knew I'd lost her. I thought I'd grieved her loss, but that particular morning, awakening from a very visceral dream of having spoken with her, it hit me harder than I did experience that I could never again turn to her for support. I have no rational reason for why it occurred to me to have a drink to ease the intense distress of that feeling. It was uncharacteristic of me, so uncharacteristic that I wondered at times if it wasn't from watching too many Westerns as a boy. But it was most certainly outside of and absent a respect that must be had for the effects of alcohol and the ever-present dangers it has, especially when used as an emotional salve. Paradoxically, I am eternally grateful for the experience I had that day. The officers were gentle, firm, and forgiving. My son was shielded by them. They were respectful, appropriate, and heaven sent. My precious son was rescued from danger, as was anyone else who may have come into harm's way. And I often wonder if my mother wasn't there somehow guiding in the way that she was so good at. After a horrible night in jail, I returned home and immediately marched myself across the street to the local church and waited for my first AA meeting to start. And from there, I began a journey of resistance, bargaining, resentment, realization, acceptance, and finally, awareness. I embraced the label of alcoholic, and the healing and centering began. The state put me through its requisites to discern if I was safe to get behind the wheel again, 9 months of drug and alcohol classwork, and to determine if my son was safe in my parenting, 52 weeks of parenting classes. His mother put me through her requisites, 6 months of monitoring and 2 years of drug and alcohol testing, all as I set about the equally important task of finding my path to calm, sober-centeredness in the midst of this maelstrom of legal challenges to my competency as a parent, DUI classes, parenting classes, AA meetings, court appearances, walking and Ubering as I abstained from driving, amidst the milieu of anger and fear from those around me. If I thought my life had challenges before, I was in for an awakening and self-reflection experience like I've never had before. I have learned so much about the brain and what happens to it from drug and alcohol use immediately and for days afterward, as well as the long-term effects on cognition and health. I learned about self-care and how necessary it is to lead a healthy life, and most importantly, to be a stable and present parent and therapist. I believed I was a good therapist, and looking back, I still believe I did no harm to my clients. Having said that, if I was unaware enough of my stress to reach a point where I would take an action that would endanger the most precious person to me in the world, then I must, by simple deductive reasoning, accept that I was not present enough in my awareness to discern adequately for myself my safety to practice. Through this experience, I have come to an infinitely greater awareness of my duties as a parent, clinician, and as a human being. I became a therapist to help people, not to hurt them, even if it was by the absence of presence and awareness. Transference and countertransference can be a very tricky thing with only mindfulness, diligent and habitual self-care, and consultation to keep it in check. Being empathetic, compassionate, patient, and fully present are all paramount in parenting and in practicing, and are all critically compromised if self-care is not diligently attended to. Though I believe I was a good therapist and father, the reference point I had lacked a comparative. I only knew what I knew, not what I did not know. The board's mandates have accomplished that for me. I am here now to testify that the board's remediation is wise, comprehensive, sound, and efficacious. Psychological testing offers an orientation point, a baseline, and an in-depth look. The drug and alcohol testing supports veracity and success of sobriety. The AA meetings offer support, ongoing reflection, action, and positive community, and the bi-weekly ability to step outside of myself and gain perspective. The psychotherapy encourages more insight and reflection, as well as emotional support and professional consultation. This entire experience has been life-changing and has offered me an important referential. This immersive experience the board has compassionately and benevolently offered to its licensees created for me a comparative point I did not have as a reference point prior to the different disciplinary action. This extended experience has created a comparative that now supports my ability to discern whether I am safe to practice. Sobriety is no longer an issue, as drinking or substance use will never be an option for me again. What must be maintained, however, is a diligence in daily reflection, action, and analysis, an acute knowledge of my stress levels and need for self-care. And in the interest of that, I have added my own stopgap measures to the board's mandates. They include, but are not limited to, daily meditation, a mindfulness practice, a gratitude practice, daily physical exercise, positive dietary awareness, diligence in sleep hygiene, daily alarmed self-checks. How am I feeling? What do I need? How do I fulfill it? I now have 4 years, 6 months, and 25 days of sobriety and experience in what it feels like to assess, address, and manage my stress and my concomitant ability to practice. My clear and resolute intention is to continue to live and practice this way of life with commitment and diligence to the end of my days. I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to the board for affording me the opportunity to deepen myself as a human being and for creating a safe space that moved me into a deeper, more present experience as a human being and as a father and as a practitioner. I am eternally grateful from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bumiller. At this point, let me ask the Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Jex, do you have some questions for Mr. Bumiller?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bumiller, can you describe your history of using alcohol prior to your arrest?
So it was casual. I probably had my most egregious use back in college when I was first introduced to it. I was in a fraternity and you know, there were a couple of intense experiences. Other than that, I have used alcohol socially and generally with wine with dinners. A beer after a hot day mowing the lawn, things like that.
Okay. You may have covered this in your statement, but how do you handle stress now rather than using alcohol?
Right. Well, I have a fairly rigorous discipline. I manage my sleep hygiene to manage my stress. I use physical exercise to reduce stress. I use meditation. I use mindfulness. So I'm constantly practicing self-awareness. I ask myself, you know, how am I have a self-check alarm on my phone that goes off every day at 7:30, reminding me to ask myself, okay, where am I? How am I feeling? Do I feel rested? How's my mood? Is there something that's bothering me? Am I angry about something? And I, to some extent, in points when I'm feeling some stress, I try and measure it from a 1 to 10 scale to ask if I'm below a 5, which is my point at which that I would want to seek help or consultation. So call my therapist, call my sponsor, go to a meeting, do something of that nature, or meditate or stretch, take a few deep breaths. I do breath work, so I'm constantly on my breath. As the judge prompted, to take a deep breath and move to center.
Okay. How would you describe your current support system?
Strong, much stronger than I've ever experienced. I have a church community that includes Reverend Parr. Includes the Reverend that wrote the support letter, Reverend Ferris. So I go to church every Sunday. I have a strong sober community, including my sponsor. My therapist is wonderful. She really asks the kind of questions that help deepen my considerations of perspective, which is another thing that helps me with stress. Being curious about my situation or my perspective, my outlook on things. So it's a strong support system that I tap on a regular basis, which wasn't there prior to this incident.
Okay. What do you think has been the most challenging part of your recovery?
I think accepting that I'm an alcoholic. That's been the strongest, the most difficult part, was taking on that label and exploring it, making it personal, making it mine, making it not something that was generic. You know, the other part that's been difficult was the at least immediate labyrinthine, the seemingly never-ending task that I had to complete to meet the board's mandates as well as the state's mandates. It went on for a very long period of time. I adjusted to it, I'd say fairly quickly, but those initial few months were difficult.
Okay. What assurances, if any, can you give the board that you no longer need to be subject to the terms and conditions of your probation?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I feel I am still subject to some of the terms and conditions, meaning the testing monthly or twice monthly was there to ensure sobriety and confidence in that. That has gone on for now, for me, as evidenced in what I presented, for 4.5 years. So I don't know if that's enough for the board. It tells me and my diligence, and without any cravings or without any of what I hear is the standard deviations that are alarming. Those aren't occurring. So I feel safe there, and I would encourage the board to feel safe there too. And then the stopgaps that they initially put in place, the therapy that will go on, the AA meetings, that's now a part of my life. The reference point that I talked about, that's been created. And I'm hoping that in the questions that are being asked, that I can reflect that back each time, that I check myself daily as to my safety to practice. And if there's any doubt in my mind whatsoever based on an elevated heart rate or an absence of sleep or some distorted thinking, then I seek advice immediately. I reach out for help and I ask, you know, all the people around me, the many people around me in my support community, how am I doing? What are you seeing? Can I talk to you about this? Can I vet this? Can I ventilate this? And can you help me gain some perspective? So I ask for help.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bumler. I have no further questions, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
At this point, I'm going to allow the board members an opportunity to ask questions if they have any. As I promised, I'll start alphabetically going down, and then next petition will reverse the order. Ms. Anthony, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumler?
So, thanks for being here today. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I looked over all of your stuff and was just really impressed by the letters. I'm really impressed by just your statement to the board. And I just want to tell you that you're a really great example of what recovery and probation can do. And one of the words that stood out to me that somebody described you as is somebody who's been transformed. And a few of the things that you stated were, I didn't think that I was a danger or to public safety. But then you quickly, like a sentence later, you talked about how, but I was, because if I was willing to put my son in that position, and then you kind of continued with that. So I just want to say, I see the transformation, and I feel like you kind of answered a lot of the questions. I appreciate you for coming today. And I just wanted to tell you that your journey is a great example of what I hope for others as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Ms. Brown, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumler?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to just mimic or support rather what Crystal just said. And I think what really hit me was when you said,
what I did was I stepped back, and instead of being a victim and in denial, I looked at it from a different perspective, as if you had a client like yourself. How would you feel? And I think that was very mature of you, and a lot of time is wasted oftentimes for being in denial and feeling like they're the victim. And you seem to have snapped out of that really fast, and you were able to progress without wasting a lot of time on that self journey. So I'm really impressed with that. And I think maybe that is what has contributed to your success so quickly. So thank you for being here this morning. I really was glad to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's nice to hear. Thank you very much for noticing. I appreciate that.
Mr. Despas, any questions for Mr. Bumler?
Just quickly, Mr. Bumler, thank you so much for being here. I concur with what has been said. It was a pleasure to hear you. It feels really like your strong commitment to what the board put in place is exactly what we would like to see. People recognizing the efforts. At the same time, then I was just asking myself, because if it works so well at the moment, why perhaps asking for an early termination? I mean, we understand the burden. This is not like easy addressing all these things in place, but at the same time, though, it is a safety measure that we put in place, not a punishment, for this exact reasons you share with us today. So can you elaborate a little bit more about that? That would really be helpful. Thank you.
So it might be a little bit more elaboration than you've asked for, but I've thought quite deeply about this question. Here's how I feel about that. I have spent so much time putting my mindset in what we just talked about, and that is that embracing this, that to say that I don't need this feels like a slippery slope to me. So I would prefer to, rather than to ask the board for early termination, though I understand that's an aspect of what's going on here. There's a part of me that wants to say again that I trust the board, that what the board has provided for me has been something that was absolutely a wonderful experience for me. I can tell you that when I went to the state, to the judge and finished all of my requisites for the state, though I was still on summary probation, he congratulated me. He said, "Great job. Looks like you've done a fine job. What was it like for you?" And that felt great to me. That spurred me on. Then when I went and asked for early dismissal of summary probation, it was only 6 months, but the judge granted and said, "Looks like you've done a great job. You've been a fine citizen. Congratulations, keep moving." That felt great. It felt great when my probation officer dubbed me with Mr. Compliance as my handle. That felt really good. It felt good to get all of these letters from the people around me offering this reflection. This felt to me like a check-in with the board. I know that in my practice, if one skill set that I offer my clients doesn't work, I'm happy to remove that and shift on to the next, because I want clients to get from my practice what works for them, not what might work for me or what might work for someone else. So it may be that the board determines that I need to go 5 years. And if that's the case, this is a part of my life now. So though I would like to direct my finances to saving for my son's education, I would like to put my energies that are taken up, however habituated in managing the mandates, I'd like to put those energies elsewhere. But I feel like this is a check-in for the board to see me in person, to check how far I've come, and to then make the determination whether or not I need these impositions or these mandates or someone to report to, rather than being able to let me go and do it myself. That's actually how I feel about it.
Thank you. That was actually very, very helpful. I appreciate you going in depth on that. So I saw a lot of those letters. I was very impressed with all the support, and it seems like you have a lot of people that appreciate your professional work and your recovery, and you've been very honest and straightforward with them. Where is that you go? Because sometimes I see a lot of perfection around you. You obviously got this really on the way that we are expecting people to do it. There is a lot of calculated approaches in relations to your recovery, which is part of what works for you, of course. And where do you go if you feel that you've been challenged? You know, we're living in very stressful times, so I believe we all have dealing with anxiety here and there and everything else. But what is your, besides the professional environment, obviously you tap into it, but what is your coping mechanism? Where do you go when things get too much for you?
Well, I like to go up into the Santa Monica Mountains to go for a walk, because not only does it feel good in the experience, but the science tells us that being out in nature is really important. So I try and do that. I take my little Pomeranian down and throw the ball for him in the garage, because he makes me laugh and how excited he is to chase the ball. I try and do something nice for a neighbor. So I step out of myself. I stop and sometimes talk to someone who is on hard times on the street, and get a sense of what's going on with them. I try and be of service. That always, I mean, that before I started as a psychotherapist, I philanthropically devoted my time to teaching autistic kids how to ride horseback, and Down syndrome adults. I volunteered for the Suicide Prevention Center when it was centered here in Los Angeles. I spent time with a group called LA Works, which was a volunteer experience. I threw a backpack on my back and went up to Alaska when the Exxon spilled all its oil in the Prince William Sound, and for a month watched sea otters and cormorants. So I have found, probably from my upbringing, that being of service and giving is the best way to relieve stress and to get outside of myself, and to realize, to get in touch with my humility and my humbleness, that I'm just a human being like everybody else. And my problems are only my problems today. And as Mark Twain used to say, thank heavens for the non-toothache.
That's correct. Well, thank you so much. Really, I really appreciate, again, your feedback, and you gave me some ideas too about my free time. But Your Honor, no further questions. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desposti.
Thank you. Mr. Ehrlich, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumiller?
Just a couple. Thank you again, sir, for being here today. And, I think that what you've talked about in your own statement, as well as some of the other board members' questions, have addressed a lot of the things that I wanted to ask you. Couple questions. I know that you had your probation terminated early in the criminal court. Were you able to get your case expunged? Have you looked into doing that, or?
I don't think that I'm yet aware of what expungement means exactly. I first tried to get it expunged early on because I thought it would make a difference in my insurance and my driving, but apparently it's not. It's the DMV, it's separate. I think my understanding, and I know you're not an attorney, or maybe you are, but I know that it's not appropriate for you to give me advice, but I'll just tell you where I stand on it. I am going to look into it because of your question, and because I've heard this question before. My understanding of it was that it then becomes a non-public record. Having said that, if that's all it is, I'm not interested in hiding my record from anyone, really. I'm not sure that I would pursue that unless there was some other advantage to it. But the short answer is no, I've not had it expunged.
Okay. I am an attorney. I don't know what the protocols are about giving legal advice, but I might recommend that you speak to, if you had an attorney, speak to them and consider doing it. I think it might be a relatively easy and inexpensive thing for you to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
If the board were to grant your petition and to terminate your probation early, what do you anticipate as far as attending AA meetings, talking with your sponsor? What sort of weekly or monthly commitment do you see as continuing or changing should the board take that action?
Well, no substantial variation from what I do now. I, especially for the first 6 months, if not the first year, as far as the therapy and the AA meetings, which I guess would be the only thing that it would be left, notwithstanding the other daily routines that I have. But I don't anticipate not going to AA meetings. I may go more or less frequently, but certainly never letting more than a week go by without attending a meeting or speaking to my sponsor. I mean, he's a very good friend, so we talk pretty frequently, Zoom pretty frequently. And my therapist is just wonderful. I don't know what I'd do without her. Not always as a stress reliever, but certainly as a person who asks the most fantastic questions. She's just, by the grace of God, one of the greatest therapists I've had. And I've been in therapy for most of my adult life, in and out of therapy. And she's just terrific. She's of the narrative bias. So she just, we talk about leveling power, the power differential, and we talk about how that shows up in my relationship with my son. I mean, that's the biggest focus lately, is my relationships, both with my son's mother and with him, and how to navigate those. He's a teenager now, and a very precocious one. So I'm trying to maintain the relationship and still give him good guidance, and that takes a lot of thoughtfulness on my part. And she asks great questions. I don't know what I would do without her, and I don't intend on stopping.
Well, I appreciate your candidness and your answers, and congratulations on really doing so well.
Thank you, Mr. Ehrlich. Thank you so much.
Ms. Friedman, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumler?
I just have one. Mr. Bumler, thank you so much for being here. I think what you had to say was incredibly eye-opening beyond what we read. So sometimes what you read really needs to be expanded upon, obviously. So I only have one question. I'm a little curious. You're not in your early 30s or late 20s or something like that. So I don't know what your life experience with alcohol had been. I mean, you talked before about having a glass of wine at dinner and things like that, but it sounds like, because you've labeled yourself an alcoholic, that you've had years of experience. And I'm just curious about that, and how you suddenly came to this experience you have with probation made you suddenly aware of that.
Well, so the quick answer is what my relationship with alcohol was disrespectful. I didn't have the kind of respect that I believe now that I needed for it, because it was casual. I'd never experienced anything that put me in danger or that had any kind of ramifications whatsoever. So that has changed, that has shifted. I now have enormous respect for it, such that I don't want to be anywhere near it for any reason whatsoever. When we talk about the label of alcoholic, one of the things I learned in the rooms is that it's an individual experience. So much, if I may, much like Pascal's theory, is that it made more sense to me to embrace the label than to question it. There was more upside to saying, yes, I am, rather than, I don't know, maybe. So I don't share the relationship, the long history of starting when I was 13 or 14 and, having it be a problem and getting DUIs and having it, break relationships or get me fired from a job or anything like that. I don't have, stories of blackout history and all of that kind of stuff, that notwithstanding college, there was one in college. But I mean, I was, 20 years old. And in a fraternity. So that is not my experience. But I have no issue whatsoever saying that day was my bottom, and that I never want to go anywhere near anything like that again. I'd like to live the rest of my life out peacefully. I didn't have a great need for alcohol in the past, and I definitely did not have the respect. Now I do. Now it's out, as is any other substance use, including, I am older. I'm about to be 65, and I have a 15-year-old son. So I'd like to be around for quite some time with full present cognition. And through my studies, both for the board and for the state, I've come into a much deeper awareness of how damaging even the smallest amount of alcohol or substance use is. So it's no longer appropriate in my life.
Thank you so much for your
I hope that answers your question. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much for being so forthright.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, any questions for Mr. Buemiller?
No, just thank you for being here, Mr. Buemiller. Your story is quite compelling.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Maddox, any questions?
Hi, Mr. Buemiller. I just want to say thank you for coming today. I just want to say thank you for the transformation that has occurred. I mean, it is clear that what happened on that day has transformed you. There's a significant amount of contriteness that I think really will support you in your career as you move forward. And I really appreciate that you're actually using this experience that you had to grow and to be a support, not only to yourself and your family, but to other people, clients that you serve. So thank you for coming. I do have one question though, and it's related to probably your foremost reminder of what happened that day. And I'm curious sort of how you manage any emotions, thoughts that arise when you see your son, or when and or if your son starts asking you questions about what happened that day. Sort of like what's your plan to sort of not only regulate and support your sobriety? Yeah, I guess that's the primary piece, because what you and he talk about is none of my business, but I'm wondering how you plan to sort of manage that, because that is going to be a primary trigger for quite a while, having to look at and speak to him about this.
Well, thank you, and Mr. Maddox, and I'm happy to thank you for the support, and I'm happy to disclose that, be transparent about it. My mother, his mother, and I put him into therapy with a wonderful therapist, Mr. Kovacs, a child psychologist, almost right away, so that he had a place to talk about it. I opened up a conversation with him about it as well. At one point, the therapist, because I was in consultation with him about my son's therapy, encouraged that, to let him come to me and talk to me about it. And so I appreciated that Liam would come to me when he needed to and ask me questions. And I would go to him and still go to him to this day on a regular basis and say, have you had any new thoughts about that day? Does it come up for you? How do you feel about it? It's been a great learning experience for him too, because the appreciation of that is not lost on me, that my son has a living example of the dangers and the massive repercussions of drug and alcohol use. So this isn't something that I will come to at one point. This is an ongoing living thing in my relationship with my son that has contained a lot of open dialogue. He hasn't had many questions about it, with the exception of I've been offering to him. He knows I'm here today. He knows what I'm going through now. He's been listening to any of the thoughts that I've been having about it. So it's in our relationship. It's alive and well, and it isn't what I would call a trigger for me about that, because we've been talking about this for some 4 years now. Does that answer your question? You can ask me something else if I didn't.
No,
get
you're
it.
fine. For some reason, you stopped talking and I thought you were frozen. So I apologize. No, that's really helpful. No, I appreciate it. No, thank you so much for coming today. That was really my only question. It is clear that this has changed you, and you are really you have taken and are taking responsibility to make lemonade out of these lemons. So thank you for coming, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox.
All right, Mr. Raina Singh, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumiller?
Yes. Mr. Bumiller, I would echo the comments of my colleague, Board Member Ehrlich, in that you should probably look toward expungement. I mean, there's also a therapeutic component to expungement as well. Your discussion is centered a great deal around your addiction. One of your probation conditions was also to complete a 52-week parenting class related to the conviction for 273A. Which is child endangerment. And I know you spoke with great emotion about the effect upon your child. What did you learn in the 52-week course, and how did that factor into your recovery?
Well, it was, thank you for asking that question. So how do I describe this? The fault in parenting was I believe, an irresponsibility towards alcohol and putting my son in danger. And that became clear to me in many other cases. I think the thing about the parenting class was it both, the parenting class is about parenting, which I mean, I have a very present and fluid relationship with my son. The parenting classes that were offered were for people who were actually not about a DUI necessarily, but more about how parenting happens day to day, how you relate to the child, how you set limits, how you set boundaries, how you offer perspective and guidance, and create, instead of authoritarian or permissive parenting, authoritative parenting. So it was both an opportunity for me. So it was an opportunity for me to extend some of my parenting skills as a therapist and as a parent to others who were, as in my practice, to others who were not so clued into some of the skill sets around parenting, of which there are many. In addition to bringing a great, as all of this experience has happened for me, is bringing a great humility that that these people that I was in the rooms with were people of good intention, people who were mindful and wanted the best for their children, and who had lost themselves for a moment, whether it was in their application of their parenting skills or in being distracted by their own difficulties in life, stresses in life. So that's what I came away from was both more confidence in my parenting, the ability to extend skills, and the awareness that I'm no better than anybody else.
Got it. Thank you very much. And I would echo the comments of my other colleagues. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Strack, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumiller?
Yes, I think just one. I want to thank you, like my fellow board members did as well, for being open and vulnerable with us and just taking us through your journey. Just the question is to make sure I get the timing right. It looks like you're about halfway through your probation now. And last year you had a reduced frequency of the testing. You shared with us that you're going to continue AA and psychotherapy. So it seems like the remaining condition of probation here that seems to be a problem for you is the testing. Do I have that right? Or are there other elements that of this process that are really what you're seeking to get rid of?
Well, so no, as I've stated before, I'm not necessarily seeking to get rid of anything. I wanted to check in with the board, let them know where I was, and let them determine whether they still feel they need the impositions, the mandates, or not. I will confide that it isn't so much the testing that is stressful. It is the checking in daily. I've missed, I think, 2 or 3 of my check-ins just for, waking up a little bit sleepy. The first one was astounding to me and very stressful because I thought I'd broken my entire probation. I immediately called my probation manager, and he assured me that it was okay, but it was still extremely stressful. And then I started questioning myself, why, how could I forget something that was so important? So I immediately set 4 or 5 alarms throughout the course of my day to remind me to check. And sorry for this. After a while, I started dismissing the alarms, not paying attention to them, because I knew that I'd checked in the morning, and then I taught my brain to dismiss those. They no longer became important to me. So the next morning that I absentmindedly forgot it, I had dismissed the alarms through the rest of the day, only to find at the end of the day, oh my gosh, I didn't check in this morning. So that I feel like I've rectified that and I figured that out. It's still stressful every time I wake up to make sure that I check in. So I will admit that that's stressful. The testing is not, especially now that it's the home testing, the video testing, I can do it from home. It's a little easier than traveling across town to get that done. I guess if there's going to be a relief at all, if the board decides to dismiss the disciplinary action, I think the most important thing for me is, as I've stated when I've gotten support from the other judges and the probation officer and my pastor and et cetera, is the positive affirmation that I'm doing well and that I've accomplished it, and it's just a kind of a feel good moment. And I guess I would have the choice if if things are tight for a month to go every other week for therapy, though I don't intend on doing that initially. I know sometimes I struggle for things to talk about in therapy, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it leads to a deeper conversation. I guess I'm looking forward to making my own choices. Of course, something about that feels really good as far as self-care goes. So I hope that's helpful.
It's very helpful. Thank you for the clarifications. And I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Wong, do you have any questions for Mr. Bumiller?
Yeah. So, Mr. Bumiller, thank you so much for just so openly and honestly, sharing your experience and, trying really hard to show us, how much you have rehabilitated. On the other hand, I also want to tell you that, coming from a parent of a 22 years old, I totally get, the struggle that you're dealing with your son, and I think you're doing definitely, the right thing, to continue to have the conversation with him. But I think the most important thing is that he look up to you as an example. So what you do now and in the past will continue to influence him. So I do have a couple of questions. So how long have you been in private practice? And are you still in private practice now?
Yes, I'm still in private practice. Well, I guess it would depend on what you determine to be private practice. So, I was under supervision for quite a long period of time, up until 2013, and I actually graduated from Pepperdine in 2005. So I went through all my requisite internships, and from my internships, I gained a pretty strong clientele, a frequent clientele. Some of them I still have from way back then. And so I stayed under supervision, though I was practicing both because the board allows it. I was practicing both within Alan's building and also a separate building, which I would include as all of my private practice, though He was supervising all of those. So from my licensure since 2013, and I guess if we count it from my departure from internship, though non-licensure, just still an intern, it would be more like 2010, maybe. I finished all my internships.
Right. No, what I'm really checking is like, you know, whether you're working for an agency or you're working for, yeah, you know, like basically working for yourself. And that's really what I meant by private practice.
Yes, I am working for myself with no supervision, no, I mean, I have cohorts. So I work in an office where there are other therapists and I have good relationships with them. But not in a consultatory way, if you will, or an oversight way. I'm independent. Yes.
Well, you have been licensed for a while, so you know that oversight technically is really not necessary. However, I think you bring up my next question. It's really about the consultation. So obviously, when you were going through all the life stress, you were in private practice. You were basically by yourself, and so like you described, you had cohort in your in your building, in your office space, in your office area, and yet, you really didn't utilize them, to, for support and stuff like that. And so what, I, for one, I'm curious about, what, why didn't you, ask for help since you have so many therapists, just right next door. And for two, it's like, how do you, do you have some formal form of consultation to just make sure, that, that you just basically guarantee the quality of the services you have for your clients?
Yes. So the short answer is I didn't then, and now I do. However, having said that, it's not as black and white as that, Ms. Wong. I did so it was a socialization, but it was also, when we had 10 minutes or a half an hour lunch break, I would openly converse with the therapist, ask them how they're doing, ask them how, how they would ask me how I'm doing, how am I feeling, how am I managing this, how am I managing that. So there was a feeling of support, absolutely. I didn't feel isolated. In moments when I had a real issue where I had a question about that, I did frequently call CAMFT, of which I'm a member. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can call and ask to speak with an attorney. And so I would utilize them as a way to bounce off my ideas about confidentiality, about reporting, all of those critical pieces that would help me, that put me in consultation. And I also was in therapy. I don't know if I think I wanted to remind myself to add this, that before Ms. DeForest, I had another therapist that I would seek counsel for, mostly around issues. So, I mean, when I say issues, mostly around concerns of my parenting, wanting to grow as a parent with my son, wanting to know how to guide him, what was going on with him, how could I be a better parent, because I was I'm a new parent, he's my only son, and I came to it late in life, and I knew that there were skill sets. I mean, I worked in early childhood parenting center, was one of my internships. And so I could see very clearly that there were things that you could do to advance their growth and also develop the relationship, because as you said, they do what we do, not what we say, which of course led me to the terrific book, Parenting from the Inside Out by Dr. Dan Siegel. So that helped me really understand that the more work I do on myself, the more that shows in my life. So I did have support systems around me, but I wasn't as good at asking for help as I am now.
Good. Right. Wonderful. So, I think this is also very important for the board to consider, is that, when during your practice, if you have, how, the way how you conduct yourself, might affect the client, the services. especially, in our technical world, the countertransference is a really, really big deal. And so I just want to, make sure that, you do have a mechanism in place that when those things happen, then you can actually go back to that source of support, to make sure that, the services that you provide to the public is not, causing any harm. So, and I'm glad to hear that you do have one, and I do encourage you, to probably have some, formal mechanism, so that, consultation group is always good, whether it's for support, it's mostly for the professional one, so that you're not also using your therapist, to kind of like, it's the boundaries a little bit clearer. You leave the consultation group, with the work with the clients and stuff like that. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, so just may I say thank you for that, because I couldn't agree more that, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. I couldn't agree more that transference and countertransference, as I said in my statement, are a very tricky thing. How I show up for clients is really critical. They are reading, 80% of all communication is meta communication, is nonverbals. So they're going to read what's going on with me as much as I might be reading what's going on with them. And if I'm not clean, if I'm not centered and prepared for that, it can happen very quickly and without knowledge. There's a whole world going on in my client's perspective that I am both aware of and unaware of.
Right.
So thank you for that. And I actually have questioned that myself, if my therapist was an appropriate place to seek consult, and I'm somewhat timid about that. And now I'm remembering that one of my cohorts, this wouldn't be appropriate for me, but he has mentioned a couple times a consultation group that he has where where they meet once a month or every other month and sit and talk about clients, talk about difficult clients. And I remember that being a really wonderful piece at Open Paths, which was one of the places that I did my internships, where once a week, I think it was, well, once a month, there was a particular therapist that would come in and ask us, so give me your cases, tell me what your toughest clients are, let's bring it out into the room and talk about that. And I found that to be, I'd forgotten about that. I found that to be a great relief. So thank you. I will take that to heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have no further question, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. All right, and so let me just make sure, Mr. Bumler, did you have any other witnesses that you wanted to present today, or was it just yourself?
Just me, Judge. Thank you.
And that's perfectly fine. I just want to make sure we didn't omit anyone. And then did you have any additional documentary evidence other than what that was already in your packet to present?
No, I did not.
Perfect. All right. Then any concluding remarks? I think you've covered things very well, but if there's anything you want to add before we close the record, Mr. Bumler?
Well, let me ask this question. Would the board want that statement that I just read to reflect back on, or is that necessary? Either way is fine with me.
Mr. Disposti, I'll defer to you. Do you believe you need that statement?
I actually don't, but Mr. Bill, yeah, I don't think that's the case. Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary from the judge's point of view. I think we all heard your comments and took our notes, and so I think that's perfectly fine. I don't want to delay resolution of your case any longer than necessary. So I think that's fine. And let me see. I just want to make sure the Deputy Attorney General, any additional comments by you before we close the record?
Nothing. Thank you, Judge.
All right. Thank you so much. Then at this point, this concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The record is closed. The case is submitted for decision, and we're off the record in this matter. Mr. Sangeet, I just need the end time and the number of pages from you. And then Mr. Disposti, are we taking a 10-minute break, did you say?
Exactly. Yes, we're going to reconvene at 10 o'clock. It's 9:49 right now. So for the matter of the record, we're closing and reopening at 10.
Perfect. And sorry, one last comment I just want to make. I just want to remind the board members to make sure to keep focused on the rehabilitation questioning. That'll make sure we we can conclude our petition hearings in a timely manner. I would also just observe generally to make sure that we are not engaging in giving legal advice and things like that throughout the hearings. I didn't feel it was necessary to interrupt anyone. I don't think it strayed way into legal advice. I just wanted to again remind that we just need to remain focused on questioning petitioners about the rehabilitation evidence. All right, thank you so much. Enjoy your break till 10 a.m. Mr. Sangeet, whenever you're ready, and then I'll let you go too.
Good morning.
Earlier at the hearing, I do find the quorum is present. And at this time, may I please have an appearance by the Deputy Attorney General.
Brent Jex, Office of the Attorney General for the public. Thank you, Judge.
Good morning to you again, Mr. Jex. And for the petitioner. Ms. Thomas, are you there? And
yes,
perhaps you've muted yourself.
Yes, I've unmuted myself now.
No worries. So are you Wendy Thomas, correct?
I am, sir.
All right. And are you representing yourself today, or do you have an attorney to represent you?
I'm representing myself.
All right. And again, I just want to make sure you understand, you're aware that you do have the right to be represented by an attorney, but at your own expense. Unfortunately, we don't have public defenders in these civil matters. Is it still your desire to proceed representing yourself today?
Yes, sir.
All right, terrific. So in terms of how the procedures will work today, first, the Deputy Attorney General will introduce your petition packet and provide us with an orientation in this matter. And then after that, you will have the right to make a presentation under oath to explain why you believe your petition should be granted. You also have the right to call other witnesses to testify on your behalf, and yourself and those witnesses, if any, would be subject to questioning by both the Deputy Attorney General and the board members. And I'll just emphasize again that the board is particularly concerned with your evidence of rehabilitation and the activities that you engaged in since the license discipline has been imposed. Not here to relitigate all of the events that happened before that. I will also remind you that the board has had the benefit of reading your petition package, so there's no need to repeat anything that's included there, but you can certainly highlight or emphasize any portions you deem appropriate. And then after this hearing, the board will go into a closed session to deliberate at the end of the day, and then a written decision will be received in the mail in the future. So you won't have a decision today, unfortunately, but that's just how the deliberative process works. Do you have any questions at this point in time that I can answer?
No, sir.
All right, then at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jex, the Deputy Attorney General, to introduce your case and introduce the petition packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. On April 12th, 2018, Ms. Thomas was issued an Associate Clinical Social Worker registration, which upon issuance was immediately revoked, stayed, and placed on probation for 4 years. The underlying circumstances are that between October 1st, 2013 and June 30th, 2014, Ms. Thomas made false statements on an application to obtain CalFresh aid totaling $4,812. Ms. Thomas pled guilty to obtaining aid by misrepresentation and perjury by false affirmation. The court deferred entry of judgment, and Ms. Thomas was ordered to complete a public assistance fraud diversion program consisting of 40 hours of community service and payment of restitution in the same amount, $4,812. On February 9, 2017, the case was dismissed based on Ms. Thomas's successful completion of the diversion program. Ms. Thomas's package contains the petition, including a personal statement, letters of support from Grace Odiek, Joan Bruner, and Martha Notterer, a resume and letter dated May 1st, 2020 from Dr. Adrian Avila, who is Ms. Ms. Thomas's therapist, a direct service supervision record from Heartland Center, certificates of completion of certain coursework, the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order effective April 12th, 2018, notice of today's hearing, and the registration history certification for Ms. Thomas. As the burden is on Ms. Thomas, I have no further statement, but reserve the right to question her. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Jex. Let me just ask one quick question. So we will mark that evidence packet as Exhibit 1, and I did receive some additional evidence. I want to make sure, first of all, that the board members had also received it. It was 3 additional letters, and I don't know if you submitted that, Mr. Jex, or if the petitioner did, but it looks like they're updated letters from Dr. Avila. There's one dated September 29, 2020. There's an October 1st, 2020 letter from Joan Bruner, LCSW, and there's a September 28, 2020 letter from Tracy Jones, LCSW. Basically, who submitted this into the record? Was it you, Mr. Jex, or?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay, great. And so I'm going to mark those additional letters that I just mentioned will be marked as Exhibit 2. And let me ask Ms. Thomas, do you have any objection to admission of Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 into evidence?
No, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Then at this point, it is your opportunity to testify. As I mentioned earlier, there's no need to repeat everything in the packet, but you can certainly emphasize any portions you believe should be emphasized or highlighted. Is it your desire to testify?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me have you raise your right hand and I will swear you in. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. All right. And since you don't have an attorney to ask you questions, you can just testify freely and let us know whatever you believe is relevant. And then once you're done, the Deputy Attorney General and the board members may have some questions for you. Okay?
Okay.
All right, go ahead, ma'am.
So first I want to say thank you all for giving me the time to be able to submit my petition and to be here today to give me an opportunity to present my case. I am a bit nervous right now.
And as I mentioned, I just want to, in fairness, again repeat, as I mentioned to the previous petitioner, we all understand this is a difficult and stressful testifying before a judge and a board. Take your time, take a deep breath, relax, and you'll do just fine.
Thank you. Thank you. I moved to California in 2008. And I became a single parent after a 13-year marriage and with 3 kids. My older daughter had a baby and had a nervous breakdown, and I was put in a situation where I was already struggling to maintain my household for the basic needs, and having to have custody of my 2 grandchildren put me in one of those situations that I never imagined, or a parent never wants to.
I'm sorry. This is Judge Van Rooyen, just for the record. I'm hearing someone speak in the background. It's someone named B. Heck, and if you could just mute yourself, thank you. Sorry, Ms. Thomas. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And putting that situation, it was very stressful. It was something I did not imagine. And I found myself having to ask for public assistance support. In doing so, I were not educated on those matters, and I was taking ill advice, and my ignorance as well led to my actions of misconduct, not being forthcoming, giving that I'm thinking I'm just wanting to get assistance for my grandchildren, not my children. Either way, I misrepresented the information that was provided and leading to me having to wind up in court. My actions on that day was very misguided. It was more guided by my stressful situation and not cognitive awareness of my values. My action on that day very much hurt the values that I was raised by. And looking back on that, it gave me an opportunity to be more cognitive in the moment of stress, be more focused in my decision-making of right and wrong. What do I want to stand for? What do I believe in? And where is my action going to lead? Regretfully, I did not apply those at that time. My actions on that day gave me an opportunity to reflect on, I have children, what kind of example am I setting for them? As a professional going into a position where the power is so unequal with clients, what will I do in those moments of ethical dilemma in decision making? So I do believe the actions of the board gave me an opportunity to enhance those values that I know to be true and be more present when I'm making decisions. It's taught me to ask questions, get clarification, seek support, develop decision-making skills and apply them. It also allowed me to represent myself in situations of dilemmas or stressful events in a brighter light. It allowed me to enhance and search myself. And in doing so, I went ahead and got me a mentor. I've worked with the military for over 5 years, and I enrolled in a mentorship program there that he would provide me with books on ethics or values or situations in life, very positive mindset or mind changing or being able to view things differently. In doing so, I also took up journaling as a personal way of holding myself accountable and opportunities to reflect. It also, going to therapy was, at that time was I couldn't begin to say how helpful it has been. And it is my intentions to continue with therapy at least once or twice a month. I've developed a support system around me with people that have been great leadership to me and in their roles and in their profession as well. And I will go to them for guidance. I've also surrounded myself with a social connection that we will hold each other accountable for what goals we set and what's the process to acquire that. It really gave me a healthier mindset in decision making. And I am here asking the board today for early termination of my probation for 2 very focused reasons. I am the first of my mother's 6 children to have went to college and gotten a college degree. My family looks up to me. My children looks up to me. My colleagues have seen things in me that I was not aware that I'm capable of doing when it comes to problem solving and being of assistance to my clients in advocating for them, and just the naturalness I've been told of the caring person that I am. I've worked with service members, traveling the ships with them, and gotten recommendations from captains and sailors of how helpful I was by just giving the little bit of detail that they needed. And my desire is to go back and do that. It was one of the, I've worked with youths, I've worked with adults, I've worked with dual diagnosis, and my passion lies with supporting the service members of the military. And I would like to go back and do so. And I am not able to with being on probation for my ASW. It has been a 6-year journey to accomplish this master's degree and to be sitting here today. Throughout that time, I have never turned to any kind of substance to manage my challenges. I have always been able to talk to my mom, my sisters, my colleagues, my friends for support. When I first moved here to California, I didn't have a support system. I don't have any family in California. That may have been one of my challenges at that time. And recognizing the importance of a support system has led me to build one that is of same value, or different cultures, different profession, so I could have a more, just to gather better understanding, knowing that the population of this profession is definitely a diverse one. I've volunteered. I've never been in the military, but I've volunteered when I first came here to San Diego, and that's what kind of led me to the connection, volunteering over at the Naval Hospital in San Diego. And listening to other people's situation has also educated me on, you're not alone. What you do in those moments does make a difference. Be sure that decision that you're making is one of value, of care, and of betterment. I've always enjoyed swimming as self-care. I've always been from the Caribbean. I've always enjoyed listening to music. I enjoy going for walks, and my faith is something that has guided me through so much. My children volunteers in church on Sundays, with the exception from now. No one's able to do so due to the pandemic that's going on. I strive to be a better person. I look for opportunities that will educate me. I don't shy from challenges as I did before. I embrace my shortcomings to build on my next step. I identify my strengths, I identify my challenges, and utilize my resources as well as my education, my upbringings, to assist me in my decision making. As for my future, I continue to surround myself and educate myself. partake in activities that will help me enhance my ethics in this profession. I've had several opportunities to see how many dilemmas that come across therapists in practice, and I have valued incredibly the consultation, my supervisors, my colleagues, the clients educate me. I am definitely of a change mindset when it comes to decision making moving forward. And for those reasons, I ask the board for early termination today.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. At this point, I'll see if the Deputy Attorney General has any questions for you. Mr. Jex?
Very briefly. Ms. Thomas, in your petition, you state, I am also determined that there is never a recurrence of anything of this nature. I have taken several ethics, cultural, and professional trainings in addition to the ethics class the board required of me. My question is, what have you learned from the ethics, cultural, and professional trainings that you completed, and how will these trainings help prevent a recurrence of what happened?
What I learned from those ethics training is the importance of value, the importance of the trust that's being placed in me in practice, and the outcomes, the effect that I have in that decision making. What are the basis for my actions? How does ethics apply to that action that I'm going to take? What is the importance? And having colleagues asking questions, consulting, recognizing when I don't know, and how to find out or educate myself on what I do not know to be sure that I am within the values, the morals, what's set forth before me. So the most important thing I've learned is ask questions, seek advice.
Thank you. Judge, no further questions.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Jex. Let me ask if the board members have questions, starting with Ms. Wong.
Your Honor, can I, do you mind just a second?
Yes.
So at the very beginning, we were going over the documentations for our petitioner. So I just want to make sure it's not an issue with my own filing, but I didn't see any latest uploads in addition to what was submitted before September 22nd, because in my file, I only see every uploads for September 22nd. So it could be me. So I would like to check with my own board members if that's the...
No, please do. I'm so glad you raised that, because I mentioned I was going to ask whether the board members had it, and I neglected to do so. So thank you for reminding me. What is this?
Mr. Dispaciti, Kelly, Runner Singer, I don't have any documents after September 22nd either.
Okay.
Same.
Is anyone else that had Kim? I see that.
Yeah, I just when were those documents, the additional documents provided?
So all I can tell you, Kim, is in my let me just pick up one of the files and just give me 1 second. I'll open our file system here. So it looks like we received it at OAH on October 6th, 2020. Yesterday. So it's yeah, yesterday, yeah, or the day before yesterday.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Let me check with staff and we may be able to load them up quickly in the box for you. And do you, Mr. Van Roen, are you able to tell if those documents came directly from our office?
I can't actually tell that just from my filing system here, because we have an intermediary. Our staff uploads it to our PM system, so I'm not sure exactly. That's why I asked Mr. Jackson in the beginning whether he submitted it or whether it was a petitioner document that was submitted after the packet.
Okay, and forgive me, I don't recall that answer to your question.
Judge, can I add some information?
Sure, please.
Ms. Thomas emailed me the documents on Friday, October 2nd. She also sent them to Craig Zimmerman at DCA and bbs.probation@dca.gov. And I uploaded documents to OAH on Monday, October 5th.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I know who to chat with. So I will get the documents to the members
This is
so
a court
that they
reporter.
can have them when they deliberate.
This is a court reporter. If everyone can please speak one at a time, I would appreciate it. It's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sangeet. I'm sorry. Yeah, we got a little conversational as we're trying to figure the records out. Okay, perfect. Would the board be ready to proceed with the questioning though while you wait for the documents?
Yes, I think we can do that. Absolutely.
Okay, terrific. And I'll start backwards this time. Ms. Wong, do you have any questions for Ms. Thomas?
Yes. So Ms. Thomas, thank you so much for coming to the board and to state your case. And I want to congratulate you for being the first daughter, in your family, to get the college degree. This is a very, very big deal. So congratulations for that. And then I also want to, state, maybe just for my curiosity, where did you move from prior to living to California?
I lived in Florida.
I see. So, so changing, the culture, from Florida, to California, it is drastically different. So I can understand the stress that, that you experienced, since to move here. So I want you to speak a little bit more about the psychotherapy. Now, please do not, you don't need to repeat, everything you said, but mostly I want to hear from you what the insights and, what have you been learning, from these therapy sessions?
I learned that was an outlet for me to help me process stressful situations. I've had the opportunity to talk more in depth about the position that I was in at that time of ignorance. I've learned to develop in therapy from being asked very thought-provoking questions as to what will I do if I'm in certain situations again, and how to navigate the unknown. And navigating the unknown is itemizing what are your needs, itemizing what is your resources, what is the objective that you're trying to obtain, what kind of resilience would be needed for that process. Because I think one of the things that I was a bit ignorant to was processing. And having the opportunity to do pros and cons, make a list, combat them against each other, compare them, see what directions I'm wanting to head in and where that decision will lead to. Focus on the present. Mm-hmm. Because what you do in the present will determine what's going to happen in the future. So I think is utilizing my resources, itemizing my needs, problem solving, and most importantly, admitting when I don't know something and seek the appropriate support.
That's very wonderful. I'm glad that, you learn a lot of the skills, how you manage and, in your thought process. So, so you speak about, the, in the time you navigate the unknown. So the unknown is a very big source stress that you dealt. Now, when you see it's in and day out, it looks like your current position is working in the crisis, or obviously the crisis response team, the domestic violence response team, and talking about unknown. so I wonder now, how did you, how do you manage, the same unknown situations, in your work?
Everyone. Well, good afternoon. It's not evening yet. Welcome to the Behavioral Board Sciences. This is Max Disposti, the chair of the BBS. We're reconvening for our public sessions on the public hearing, and it's October 8, 2020. The time is 1:53 p.m. Your Honor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Disposti. And just our court reporter will go on the record now for purposes of the petition. All right, we are on the record before the Board of Behavioral Sciences, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California. We're reviewing our last petition today, which is the petition for early termination of probation by Mark Gallion. This is OAH case number 2020-090-420. An agency case number AMFT 104696. My name is Wim van Rooyen. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings for the state of California, and I've been assigned to preside over this matter. Today is October 8th, 2020. The hearings were noticed to start at 8:30 a.m. It is now approximately 1:54 p.m. We are conducting this matter via Zoom due to the COVID-19 public health crisis and the Governor's Executive Order N-25-20, dated March 12, 2020. And I will let the record reflect that we do have a quorum of the board present based on a roll call that was taken earlier this morning, and nothing has materially changed. So we do have a quorum for purposes of the hearing. May I please have the appearance by the Deputy Attorney General?
Good afternoon, Judge. Brent Jex, Office of the Attorney General.
And good afternoon to you, Mr. Jex. And for the petitioner?
Good afternoon, Mark Gallion, appearing for himself.
And good afternoon to you, Mr. Gallion. And is that how I was hoping I was not mispronouncing your name horribly? What is the correct pronunciation one more time?
Gallion, you did a wonderful job.
Gallion, all right, perfect. And so let me just double check. You are representing yourself, correct? No attorney representing you today?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, and you are aware of your right to have an attorney represent you, but at your own expense. And is that still your desire to proceed today without an attorney?
Yes, it is.
All right. So in terms of the procedure today, the Deputy Attorney General will proceed first to introduce your petition packet and give us an orientation in your matter. And then after that, you will have an opportunity to make a presentation under oath to explain why you believe your petition should be granted. You may also call any other witnesses you believe it would be relevant, and both yourself and any such witnesses would be subject to questioning by both the Deputy Attorney General and the board members. And then I just would again emphasize that the focus of the hearing today is on rehabilitation since discipline was imposed, and not so much, we're not here to relitigate the underlying facts that led up to your discipline. I'll just remind you that the board already has had the benefit of reading your petition package And so there's no need to repeat everything that's in there, but you can certainly highlight or emphasize any portions you deem appropriate. After the hearing, the board will go into a closed session to deliberate on your petition as well as the other petitions heard today. You won't get a decision today, but you will get a written decision in the mail in the future. With all that said, do you have any questions for me at this time about the procedure or anything else?
No, I do not. I've watched the previous ones, so I'm pretty clear now.
Okay, great. Yes, and I just have to make sure that you understand all of these rights. I know by the time you get to the 5th, you've heard the admonitions many, many times, but I need to just make sure that you receive those as well. So at this point,
Yes, I understand.
Thank you. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Jacks to present the case and your petition package.
Thank you, Judge. On February 21st, 2018, Mr. Gallion was issued an Associate Marriage and Family Therapist registration, which upon issuance was immediately revoked, stayed, and placed on probation for 4 years. The underlying circumstances are that the petitioner was convicted of misdemeanor driving while his driving privilege was suspended or revoked, and petitioner failed to disclose the conviction on his application for licensure. Additionally, Mr. Gallion was disbarred by the State Bar of California by default decision after multiple issues arose from failing to return advanced client fees and Mr. Gallion's inability to abide by State Bar discipline. This is Mr. Gallion's first petition for early termination of probation. Petitioner's package contains his petition, including a personal statement, letters of support from Hannah Weinstein, Natasha Singer, Dr. Stephen Winston, Grant Clark, Alina Neiman, Melissa Pedersen, Johnny Dodson, and Kim Self. The stipulated settlement and disciplinary order effective February 21st, 2018, as well as notice of today's hearing and the registration history certification for Mr. Gallion. As the burden is on Mr. Gallion, I have no further statement at this time and will reserve the right to question him. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Jacks. So I will mark the petition packet as Exhibit 1. Any objections to admission of petition packet, Mr. Gallion?
None.
All right, Exhibit 1 is admitted. And then is it your desire to testify today?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. And let me have you raise your right hand and I'll swear you in. Do you solemnly state under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Fantastic. All right. And then, as I mentioned earlier on, no need to repeat everything in the packet, but feel free to highlight anything and give us any information you believe is relevant to your petition. Once you're done with your testimony, Mr. Jacks may have some questions for you and the board members may as well. All right, you can go ahead, sir, whenever you're ready.
All right. I wish I'd prepared a written statement, but I'm not quite that well organized, apparently. A little bit of history. One of the things that I find the most beneficial about the way the BBS works as far as requiring an associate period and a supervision period. As an attorney, that's not required. The day you're sworn in, you're free to do whatever you want. I didn't ever have mentors as an attorney, and it doesn't really justify anything that I did, but I believe that every attorney that I've ever worked for has been disbarred, which didn't give me a solid launch into that career, unfortunately. I tried to learn the best I could along the way. But clearly I made some significant errors. Starting in about 2009, my life got very, very dysfunctional. I lost my home based on the housing collapse, the bubble that collapsed back then. The home that I had purchased was worth 50% of the loan that I owed on it, which meant there was no way to stay in that home. My marriage was falling apart. I was trying to run a sole practice, and I was not doing a good job at managing and coping with all of that. By the time I lost my law license, that happened in the same time frame that my marriage dissolved. I moved from Orange County to LA County, and my son went to live with my ex-wife. That was also when I was trying to deal with the suspended license issue, which I would like to point out was not suspended based on a DUI or something like that. At that time, if you didn't pay a traffic violation, your license would be automatically suspended. And my underlying failure there was a failure to pay, a failure to stop. I ran a stop sign, and that's where it came from. Wow, I sound very defensive so far. So all of that led to a lot of chaos. Ultimately, I lost my law license because I was suspended for not responding to the State Bar of California. A client filed a complaint, and in the midst of my divorce, I told myself I'll deal with that next. And I got automatically suspended, and then I didn't respond within 6 months, which led to automatic disbarment. All of which I take responsibility for at this point. After or as all of that was happening, I went into therapy and spent several years doing deep psychoanalysis, dealing with my codependent issues, dealing with the passive aggressive issues that I had developed as my marriage failed, learning how to cope with emotions, learning how to cope with stress. And part of that I felt was so successful that I wound up going back for a psychology degree and seeking to become a therapist myself and to continue to pass on the things that had made such a difference in my life. When I completed the application for my associate number, I was very, very fearful that having been disbarred was going to disqualify me for obtaining the associate number and being allowed to continue this path. I spent a significant amount of time. I've gone back and reviewed it. My memory says that initial application with all of the state bar documents and paperwork was somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 pages long. I tried to be very, very thorough. And in the process of that, I forgot the traffic ticket because I just, there isn't any because, I just failed to admit it. When I was contacted by the board and challenged that, hey, you forgot this, I immediately went and sought those records, which given the age of those records was a little bit challenging to obtain. But I went down and spent a significant amount of time bouncing from courthouse to records office in Orange County to make sure that I could provide those and tried to provide those as completely and as accurately as possible. It was an omission. It was not intentional. I was not trying to hide anything. In the meantime, I had continued therapy. I had continued psychoanalysis. Once the board decided to put me on probation, I sought out a different therapist that would be approved by the board. I, as of course you would expect, have been in full compliance with all of the board requirements since probation began, including the psychiatric evaluation, which I have not seen the results to, but I assume it could not have been horrible or y'all would have pulled my license. I have really focused on learning how to manage emotions, how to cope with life's challenges in a healthy way. I have become extremely organized. I use not only a calendar, but I have a daily to-do list. In the meantime, 1 year after my son went to live with my ex-wife, he came back to live with me due to her addiction problems. And they were severe enough that I was granted sole legal and sole physical custody of my son. And I have been his sole caretaker since he started 5th grade, and he is now in 12th grade, so 7 years. Trying to raise him differently than the life he had with his mother and me. Between my disorganization and her addiction, there were frequent arguments, frequent financial issues. And so it has been my goal to teach him how to be organized, how to be an effective and compassionate man. Not only did I seek therapy for myself, but my son was in therapy for 5 years as well, trying to process the loss of his mother, trying to process the loss of an intact family, and trying to process my failures as a father. I did participate with him when he wanted it in that therapy. The therapist would invite me in frequently. And again, it was about how do I help him develop the skills that I had not developed so that he could avoid the mistakes that I had made. Professionally, I have tried to develop a career where I am giving back to people. I started about 2.5 years ago working in drug and alcohol treatment. The first facility that I worked at was focused specifically on women ages 18 to 30 that were not only addicts, but also homeless, sex trafficked, and abused. So I was immediately thrown into dealing with trauma, dealing with severe mental health, dealing with abuse, dealing with homelessness, and dealing with addiction all at the same time. And I will say that for more than a year, I was literally the only man in the building. It was a 75-bed female facility, and I was the man allowed in the building. So it became part of my focus to show these women that they could interact with men without sex, without drugs, without manipulation, that there could be just a caring interaction. I still work in drug treatment now. I moved to another facility down in Huntington Beach, California. It is co-ed. I work with both young men or both men and women. Everything. My youngest client was 18. My oldest client is 64 years old. And what I have, while I don't identify addiction as my problem, the longer I've worked in treatment, the more I identify the addictive behaviors as things that I did nonetheless. The avoidance of emotions, hide from feelings, the impulsiveness, the need to avoid feeling. And so those are all things that I worked very hard to help train them how to deal with the way I have been learning over the last few years. I've maintained a great relationship with my therapist, and I don't intend to terminate therapy if probation is ended. As I tell my clients, life continues to throw problems at us, and I think we all need therapy in one form or another. I am scheduled to take my licensing exam on October the 26th. So in about 2.5 weeks, I will be taking my exam, hopefully passing. And so I've given a lot of thought to what will I do once I pass, and how do I ensure that I don't fall back into old habits, or that I don't become problematic for my clients or for the public. One of the things that I value, I sort of glossed over this at the beginning, is the requirement for supervision that I've had over the last 5 years that I've been working as first while I was in school, and then as an associate afterwards. And one of the things that I've committed to is ensuring that once I'm licensed, to find like-minded therapists and establish sort of not a supervision, but a discussion group where we can meet weekly or bi-weekly and discuss our cases, discuss our clients, and help each other stay accountable and stay effective. I had so much else I wanted to say, but I think I'm taking up too much time. I don't know if that is what you want to hear. I hope it is. I do believe that that I do not need to remain in supervision. One of my fears, as was mentioned by a prior petitioner, is that as I get licensed, it will impede my ability to get some employment. And I'm hoping that the efforts that I've made to date have shown that I am not a danger to the public. And I can, one last thing, I apologize, I'm trying to wrap this up. Having lost my license with the state bar, having gone through all of that, after, as a few of you at least that are attorneys are aware of the effort that it took to get there, the law school, the studying, the bar exam, the training. I will never make that mistake again. I am now super organized to the point where I've had reminders popping up daily about this hearing for a week to ensure that I didn't somehow overlook or omit it. I have reminders that pop up daily for a week in advance of the quarterly reports that are due to ensure that I do not possibly overlook or omit my obligations to the board. And I can assure you that if any question were to arise, I will be very responsive to the board. I will never show the disrespect to the board that I did to the BBS. That was inexcusable. So with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gallion. I'm going to allow the Deputy Attorney General to ask you some questions now. Mr. Jex, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Gallion, do you think that you have benefited from being on probation, or do you view probation as kind of a sentence that you have to serve in order to get into this field?
That's sort of a double-edged sword of a question there. I think that the required supervision, both before and after I was put on probation, have been extraordinarily beneficial, teaching me how to be a better therapist, how to be a better person, and how to stay accountable. I respect I respect that I was put on probation. I think that being forced once again to be accountable and to remind me how important it is to comply with regulations was very, very important. So in some ways, yes, I do believe I have benefited from it, but I believe as well that the psychoanalysis that I was doing, the focus that I was trying to make even before probation was already putting me on this path. So the probation just continued that work.
Okay. What's been the most difficult part of being on probation for you?
Emotionally, losing my license to practice law was very, very difficult. When my associate number was denied, all of those feelings came up again. That feeling of rejection, that feeling of being judged by people that know me only for what's on paper rather than knowing me as a human. And that was very, very challenging for me. Once I've been on probation, the requirements themselves, I would not say have been egregious. I think they've been appropriate. Remembering to file a report once a quarter is not overly daunting. Initially having to do the psych evaluation, having to find a new therapist, they were frustrating, but overall, I think the biggest challenge for me with probation was emotionally coming to grips with that feeling of rejection and that feeling of judgment.
Okay. What assurances can you give the board that you no longer need to be on probation?
Well, I'm sure we can all say I shouldn't be on probation. I do intend to continue therapy. I do intend to continue supervision. In fact, I've talked with my supervisor at the facility I work at now, and she has agreed to continue supervising me even after licensure, so that I can continue to make sure that I'm not a risk to the public or that I'm not making inappropriate decisions. I believe that over the last 7 years, I've learned so much about how to recognize my internal struggles, how to ask for help, and how to face and address challenges rather than hiding from them.
Okay. Can you describe your support group?
After my divorce, I moved back close to my parents. I reconnected with my parents. And I have a very, very strong and supportive relationship with them now. I could not have been the single father that I've been. I could not have worked and gone to school if I hadn't been able to rely on them to pick my son up from school occasionally and do those things. I have developed a very, very close network of friends that I've been very open with. At the time of my divorce and the loss of my law license, I really decided to start over. So I moved away from friends, old areas that I hung out, and reestablished myself completely. The group of friends that I'm with now all know me as a therapist. They all know me as somebody that is very calm. I have probably a dozen friends that I could call at any time to talk day or night. I have a very good relationship with my therapist, all of whom I rely on.
Thank you, Mr. Gallion. I have no further questions, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Jex. All right, turning to the board members, starting with Ms. Anthony. Do you have any questions for Mr. Gallion?
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Brown.
Hi, thank you for coming in today. And my question is, I've heard where you started and now where you are. And what would you say is I've heard where I believe you have grown over this time between losing your law degree and such. What do you think has been the biggest growth? What have you learned the most? And I'm not asking for, you to have to explain everything that you've already explained, but in a word or two, where do you think the growth has been the greatest to go from where you described you were to how I hear you speak of yourself today?
That's not the word you wanted. I would say, honestly, anger management has been one of my biggest things.
Okay.
I am both Irish and German, which can be a bit volatile. And I have gotten to a place now where somebody at work, one of the clients the other day, I was teaching an anger management group, and I referred to my previous anger issues. And the client looked at me and said, "You are the calmest person I've ever met." He said, "I can't imagine you getting angry." And that really cemented for me the transition from being somebody that was quite volatile and allowed his emotions to drive the boat to somebody now that can process and make rational decisions instead.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Disposti, any questions?
Hi there. Hi. I just wanted to hear, I know you mentioned a little bit the population you were working with. If there was a segment where you focused on that particular environment with survival of human trafficking. Looking forward, what is the population you're more drawn to do some work, and why? And yeah, if you can speak a little bit more to that, that would be really helpful.
You know, I find that question interesting because as therapists, we have so many different options. I've really fallen in love with working in substance abuse because I see people that are so hopeless and in some ways helpless because of their addiction, because of their trauma. And so I really want to be able to help some of that population. Working with the young women, the survivors of sex trafficking, was one of the most rewarding things for me. The fact that they were willing to trust me. You know, I am a very large person. I'm 6'2". I'm a big man, and walking into a house full of women that have been abused was a frightening thing for a lot of them. And to be able to create a space where they could trust me and where I could help them heal. And just see, I have some clients now that I worked with that are now engaged to be married, that are now in healthy relationships, that frankly, 2 of them are now studying to get their alcohol and drug counseling credentials. And to see them go from a 9th grade education and gang histories to that, I would love to continue that kind of work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to say that. It's really important. Yes. I appreciate you, and thanks for being here. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ehrlich, do you have any questions for Mr. Gallion?
Yeah, I just have actually a one question. How are you doing, sir? Thank you for being here today.
Good, thank you.
As one of the attorney members on the board, I wanted to, I heard about what you said about kind of how you sort of got to the disbarment. And I know you spoke about how the only attorneys I think you either knew or worked for had all been disbarred. And then talking about sort of what came up in terms of the disbarment as something that you were going to put off or deal with, after some other issues in your life that were going on. And I know that, disbarment and you mentioned it as a lawyer is a significant thing in any lawyer's life. After all the training, school, studying, bar exam. And I know that state boards don't, it takes a lot for the state bar to get to disbarment. There's a lot of things in between, nothing and that. So I think my question is, what specific things have you done in your life since 2013 that, can guarantee to us that the same thing won't happen with our board?
That's such a hard question to answer because guarantees are few and far between. My understanding is that I was primarily disbarred because of the rule that says if you are suspended by default and you don't respond within 6 months, you are automatically disbarred. And so that nothing that I've been told, even by the state bar prosecutors, led me to believe that I probably would have been disbarred absent that just failure to respond for such a long period of time. How do I guarantee that that won't happen again? Of course, I can tell you that it won't, but that doesn't carry any weight. They're just words. One of the things that I discovered as I became a therapist. When I worked as an attorney, I worked in family law and criminal defense. And one of the things that my clients told me they appreciated was that I would take the time to listen to them. And my comment to them was, they don't call us counselor for nothing. And I realized I was trying to do therapy without any training. Coming to that realization, putting in all of the work, I started school in 2013 to be a therapist. And we're now 2020, we're 7 years later. It's taken me longer to get my therapy license than it did to get my law license. I've discovered a love for this career, for this industry, so much greater than my love for the law. And I can tell you that I would never, ever allow anything to get in the way of that my responses would be as timely as I hope my probation monitor has assured you that my responses have been over the last 2.5 years. Learning to manage my emotions and my ego has allowed me to accept criticism that I wasn't capable of accepting as an attorney. And so that allows me to face any challenges that might come up. I believe that the several years that I've worked being supervised, the various therapists that have supervised me have really taught me exceptional ethics, to the point where I don't believe that there will ever be a complaint. But if there is, I've had to walk through this process with a lot of humility. Losing my law license was in a form humiliating, and recognizing my humanity and my capacity to make vast errors has made me that much more willing to hear and accept guidance and ask for help. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your questions, Mr. Ehrlich?
No further questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Ms. Friedman, do you have any questions?
I have one question. Hi, Mr. Gallion. You mentioned a couple of the kinds of therapy, psychotherapy, et cetera, that you intend to continue in your life. And I'm wondering, in your probation, what is it that you find egregious you want to get rid of? You would really rather not have this as part of your life right now. Or not helping you.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I have not found the requirements of probation to be particularly egregious. I would like to terminate probation for the validation that it says that I'm actually doing things well, and that you all see the growth and the progress that I've made. I'm looking at the fact that I'm hopefully about to get licensed, and that having this limitation on my license will limit some of the ways that I will be able to reach out and to help people. And I'm hoping to move beyond that as well. I intend to continue my therapy regardless. Supervision, of course, is required as an associate, but I intend to continue working in some sort of supervision capacity anyway, just because I continue to learn. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, so there isn't any one or two things that you're having to do that impinge on your life that you would really like to get rid of, besides the fact of being validated as a wonderful human being.
Right, yes, we all would like that. But the aspect of it impinging on my employment abilities moving forward. My son is a senior in high school, and having changed careers dramatically a few years ago, I would say his college savings is lacking, and I'm terrified about the college expenses that are coming up in a year. So being able to continue to work as I have been, but also possibly to work in a practice, a group practice, something of that nature, where I can earn additional funds is very appealing to me. And I can tell you that I have been declined positions because of my license status. So that is a concern for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
All right, Mr. Jones, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, and Mr. Maddox, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. I couldn't get off mute.
That happens to me all the time. There you go.
Sir, how do you say your last name? Is it Galian?
Galleon, like a Spanish galleon.
Thank you, Mr. Galleon. I appreciate you coming today. It has been wonderful hearing your story and just seeing the progress that you've made, rebuilding your life. Very sorry for the things that you went through, but it sounds like you have been able to sort of rebuild on top of the experiences that you have, which I, greatly admire. I do have one question though. I'd like, and this will help me. So you mentioned that, I think you mentioned that you are of Irish and German descent.
Yes. What they tell me anyway.
Would you attribute it to sort of some of your challenges managing your anger? I mean, I think racial and cultural backgrounds may have some predilections, but I'm wondering more pointedly, sort of, what have you learned about your life experience that has impacted your ability to sort of have challenges historically managing your anger? Because that could kind of sound like the Twinkie made me do it kind of thing, versus saying, I own the fact that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's why I need to manage my anger. So could you just speak to the board about those things? I'm curious.
Doing psychoanalysis, doing deep evaluation, of course, they like to go back somewhere a few months before you were born and start there. One of the things that has come up quite a bit is I'm adopted. And so there's been a lot of exploration and conversation about that initial feeling of abandonment. I was adopted at 4 months old. I don't have any actual memories of my birth mother. But the stories that I've been told, apparently I was given up for adoption at birth. And then at about 2 months old, I became very, very ill. And she took me back, nursed me to health, and then gave me up a second time. So struggling, that feeling of abandonment, growing up in a mixed family, my parents were phenomenal, and I'm not criticizing them at all. I was adopted, my brother was natural, my next brother was adopted, and then my sister was natural. So we had a very blended family, but there was always, and they didn't foster it, they fought against it, but there was always a feeling of competition. My younger brother falls into the golden child sort of category. He always did everything right. And somehow I think I resented that. And I grew up as a very insecure person. I used anger to mask my insecurity. I used anger to mask my feelings of not being good enough. Even as a lawyer, I struggled with the concept of knowing that all the attorneys that I worked for had been disbarred, that maybe I wasn't as good as or good enough, and that maybe somebody was going to discover that. So struggling with all of those feelings left me a very angry person. And so I would frequently lash out, particularly if people questioned me, particularly if people criticized me. And so after losing my license and through the course of all of the therapy over the years, I've really had to go back and work through those feelings to where I've come out to the other side now, to where I'm humble. I know I don't know it all. I know that I'm going to make mistakes, but I also believe that I'm good enough, and that as long as I continue to strive to be better, I don't feel the same anger anymore. I don't respond in the same ways.
Thank you for sharing that. That is a very reflective, very personal trigger that's connected to that. And I appreciate you sharing that. And so I actually don't have any more questions. Can I just share a resource with you if you might be interested?
Absolutely.
So there's a book written by a therapist, speaking specifically to all the issues related to adoption. It's called The Primal Wound, Primal Wound. And you may want to just look that up.
I'm going to pick up my phone and make a note. I'm not answering texts or something.
Got you. So that's all. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Once again, it's called The Primal Wound, but it really speaks to the unique experience of being adopted, and it's a wonderful book. You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Ranasinghe, do you have any questions? Maybe you are muted, Mr. Ranasinghe. Are you still with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now we can hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Gallion, I'm the other attorney on the board, and I read your petition with a great deal of interest. You mentioned one of the recurrent problems in the state bar in the legal profession, which is the transitional period between law school and practice. And being lawyers, both you and I know that the legal profession can be utterly unforgiving.
Yes.
That being said, 6 months is a long time. So what assurances can you give the board that if, God forbid, something like this happens again, you will be able to confront and respond to possible recidivism? You'll be able to engage it and respond.
As I tried to allude to earlier, number one, having lost that license, I will never allow that to happen again here. But number two, going back to the ego comments that I made to Mr. Maddox, I had spent years in therapy trying to address the issues that allowed me to essentially say tomorrow's good enough. You guys will wait till tomorrow. And to get to a place now where one of the ways that I manage my anxiety and manage my emotions is to address things sooner rather than later. The longer I allow it to go on, the worse it becomes for me. And so beyond the fact that I would never show that disrespect to you again, the way the way I did to the state bar, but I will never allow myself into that state of anxiety and paralysis. And that's part of why I continue to see a therapist and why I have a group of support around me that can look at me, that will look at me and say, hey, you're acting odd. What's going on? What are you worried about?
So you have a system that will potentially hold you accountable.
Absolutely.
Okay. The other question I mentioned is, and you actually kind of addressed it with several of the other board members, and it sort of ties into the fact that you were doing crim and family. Those of us who have done criminal defense and family know that, you know, anger and this sort of emotive response is almost self-reinforcing. You and I know that it can be very easy to confuse power, privilege for competence and kind of sort of push problems to the side. And particularly because you're dealing with sort of this fragile population. Who is your support system? If you have one right now, what is your sort of consultant support system that you'll be able to reach out to on a moment's notice?
I have maintained very positive connections with all of my prior supervisors. I could reach out to any one of them and get a very, very rapid response. On top of that, I also have my current therapist who is painfully aware of my past. And so she too would take my calls in a minute. Beyond that, I have my parents and I have a very, very solid group of friends around me.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Gallion. It was really nice talking to you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Strack, do you have any questions for Mr. Gallion?
No, not at this time. I think they've been addressed by other board members. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Ms. Wong, do you have any questions?
Hi. So thank you for your patience. You're the last one, so you have watched a lot.
Oh, do I need to worry that I'm going to give you the wrong answer?
Well, you just don't have to, take up my Wong attitude. You're fine.
There you go. Okay.
And for the record, Judge Van Rooyen now got the joke this time around.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you. So when I was reading your the document that you submitted to the board, and one thing that I don't know if I should ask it, but I think I'm going to ask it anyway. Is that I just cannot. I think you gave a lot of answers. So let me put it this way. I think I just wanted a little bit clearer, clarification about your previous profession as an attorney versus now your profession as a therapist. It really uses different part of your brain. You have different persona. To a certain extent, it's really completely different. I can say that I'm no offense to all the, legal experts here, but to a large extent, I'm really careful, trying not to get myself into any legal trouble or any wrong answer. So anyway, no. So the whole persona, or how you operate in the law, is so much to do with, the rational thinking, the rational logical thinking. And it hasn't really been that long ago, because you practice law for, quite a period of time, and yet, now, the population that you serve, they are, one of the most, top challenging, population. They really are. I tell you, I love those populations too. I love those, clients with just multiple facets of issues. And so, but at the same time, it sounds like the work that you do really encourage them and inspire them, to kind of make change to themselves. So that itself, from the client's responses, it speaks volume, for the work that you do. And so I'm just trying to think, it's like, how can I make sense of that one side, just that rational person. And then this side, you just are able to reach those most vulnerable population. I am not quite understanding how this works inside you. So can you explain a little bit?
It's been a transition, but I will say that while yes, I had to definitely be very rational and very logical in my arguments as an attorney, I also had to learn to organize my thinking and express myself very clearly so that other people could understand it. Working in family law, these are these are situations when people are at some of their most emotional, the anger, the hurt, the pain, the bewilderment, and somehow it was, I didn't even consciously decide to do it, but I used to have 2, 3, 4 hour intake interviews with these clients because we were talking about all of the things that they should be talking to a therapist about, and just being compassionate and being understanding and showing them, containing for them. So I didn't realize how much I was trying as an attorney to be a therapist until I became a therapist, and I looked back and went, I was already trying to do this. In fact, I think that's part of when I said that I love this industry far more than I ever loved being an attorney. Part of my frustration as an attorney was the fact that it was black and white. The gray areas were so hard to find.
Yes.
And working with people both in family law and both in criminal work where there's so much emotion going on and where there's room for compassion, but it isn't always there, was always something that I found very, very difficult to deal with. So I think that while, yes, I was an attorney and I was somewhat successful there, I belong here far more than I did there.
So what you're saying is that, you can actually, the kind of like how you act as an attorney, many of those behaviors and and the qualities actually, it's more like in the therapy spectrum. So
in my case, yes, not in all cases.
Well, I'm not generalized to, all the rest of the attorneys in here. So no, that's very understandable. And I'm glad that you clarified this for me, so that's good. The other thing that I want to check in with you is about, you were very clear that, you would continue for, the psychotherapy and also the supervision, even though, you're licensed. So do you have an idea, or what is, what are the things that you continue to want to work on, especially therapy, I understand, but particularly for supervision, why is it that, maybe put it this way, one is about, what type of qualities or skills or knowledge that you think that you still need, supervision. And then the other thing is like, do you have kind of like an ideal, what part of, Mark, Gallion, become and change and to become that perfect ideal therapist that you always desire to be?
As far as what I want to continue in supervision, part of it is really continued training and education. I've got, I struggle with the concept that we will fall into only one area of therapy, whether it's psychodynamic or CBT or whatever. I feel like the more tools I have in that toolbox, the more effective I can be with a diverse population of clients. And so, from that perspective, I want to keep learning. From the other perspective, I find so much of psychotherapy fascinating. I've had very, very different supervisors. One described herself as an old Jewish mother. Considering she was a 75-year-old Jewish woman, it kind of fit. But she was very, very warm and very, very containing and very holding. I worked with another who was an objects relations therapist. And so he gave me a very, very different perspective. I've worked with one that was a CBT therapist. And so I think that continuing to, if I come to my supervisor and say, I've tried these 3 CBT things and it's not working, instead of him saying, well, try number 4 thing on CBT, maybe he would say, how about object relations? Or how about some psychodynamic work? And so being able to continue to expand my skill set is important. As far as who I ultimately want to be, over the last few years working on anger management and emotional management in general, Zen. I want to Zen. I want to get to where I can just model this calm and this ability to manage whatever life throws at me with just an even aplomb, to just that's really where I want to be.
I think that Zen, that Zen is really what a lot of the clinicians, therapists, should really, accomplish. That would really help people to really stay grounded and also, empty themselves and, in order to receive. Right. So very, very well. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Gallion. There you go.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that was all the board members. Let me make sure Did you have any other witnesses that you wanted to testify on your behalf today, Mr. Gallion?
No, I do not.
All right, and we have no additional documents beyond your petition packet that we've already admitted, correct?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Jex, do you have any additional comments that you want to make?
Nothing further. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much. All right, then at this point, this concludes the petition hearing in this matter. The record is closed, the case is submitted for decision, and we are off the record in this matter. Let me just make sure I get Mr. Sangeet, just get the end time and the page count, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I have an official stop time of 2:52 p.m. with a page count of 31 pages.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then I believe that concludes all of our petitions for this afternoon. So after this, pursuant to section 11126C3 of the Government Code, the board will meet in a closed session for discussion and to take action on disciplinary matters, including the petitions heard today. And I'll defer to the board president, Mr. Desposti, as to whether you would like to take a break before the closed session. Whatever you do, I'm at your disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think perhaps 10 quick brief minutes will definitely help so that we can all reconvene in closed session. And that means the board members with our judge and that's it, correct? And our legal counsel, am I right? Yes.
That sounds good.
I believe our staff will provide the way to stay on the same link so that everybody else can be logged out so that we can guarantee a closed session of the same. I'll leave that up to Steve to do that, and we'll reconvene at 3:03.
That looks right, 3:03. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you all.